And welcome back to Atreyu News. Uh-oh, Trump tax cuts might be delayed. Look at why. From Yahoo. A lot is riding on the tax cuts President Donald Trump has promised by the end of 2017. Stock markets have soared on the expectation of lower corporate taxes and higher after-tax earnings. Consumer confidence is up too, as ordinary Americans anticipate the middle-class tax relief Trump crowed about in his recent address to Congress. But the path to tax cuts on Capitol Hill is narrower and riskier than upbeat investors who have been gobbling up stocks seem to believe. Changes in tax law always create a new class of winners and losers, and every group poised to lose under Trump's tax reform is rapidly mounting opposition. That's so funny the way they word it. It's so true, too. Changes in tax law always create new class of winners and losers. So essentially, the power that was stolen from the people will be returned to the people. That's what I get from this. And Trump's tax reform is rapidly mounting opposition. Yeah, because they are shitting their pants. There's not really much they can do. They're powerless to stop us at this point. We have the momentum. We have all the power. We have all the seats. We have everything. The odds of tax reform are always less than 50-50, and that's true this year. Republican economist Douglas Holtz-Eakin said at a recent conference on tax reform in Washington, D.C., "We need these forces to get lined up in the White House, and that hasn't happened yet." The S&P 500 stock index has risen about 11% since Trump got elected in November. That is nothing short of impressive. 11%. It's impossible to know exactly how much of that gain is due to tax cut expectations, but it's a fair bet that the investors think the odds of steep tax cuts occurring this year are a lot higher than 50-50. So if Holtz-Eakin is right, overly buoyant markets are mispricing the likelihood of tax cuts with some kind of correction due. I think this guy is either foolish or he's wrong, because judging on what I've seen, the stock market has not reacted like this from an election except for like the mid or early 80s when the middle class businesses and small businesses start taking off. And that's what I see taking off, which is driving the stock market to go so high. I think it's directly related to the middle class small business owners. Trump has not yet submitted his tax plan to Congress. House Republicans, however, unveiled a tax plan last summer that is now emerging as the basis for legislation this year. And they don't plan on just moving the furniture around. Instead, they want to boldly restructure the way businesses and consumers pay taxes. They say their plan will reduce tax dodging, give U.S. corporations an advantage over foreign competition, and substantially boost economic growth. Isn't that awesome? It is funny, like the power and potential that exists in the West and in America in particular, we're already seeing it. All we had to do was let America go. Take the leash off, take the restraints off, take the restrictions off, and let America lead the world into the next age of innovation. The same boldness could also doom the legislation, however, and this may be part of the tax reform that a billion investors aren't paying enough attention to. The House plan relies on a novel border adjustment tax, or a BAT, to revamp the way corporations pay tax. The BAT often gets conflated with Trump's call for border taxes, but these are actually two different things. Trump's border taxes would basically be punitive tariffs on select products or classes of products put into place one by one to punish trading partners the Trump administration feels aren't dealing fairly with the United States. Most economists think this kind of protectionism does more harm than good. Most economists are actually working for the world order, so of course they're going to say this kind of protectionism does more harm than good, because it doesn't harm us, it harms them. It is funny how they play with words, because what they're saying is true, but they don't specify on who's affecting what. And Trump himself may only be threatening such tariffs as a negotiation ploy. Well, whether it's a ploy or I hope it's not a ploy, but even if it is a ploy, bravo. Breaking: North Korea admits its missile tests were actually military training and it's bad. North Korea has stated that its missile test launchers were training for strikes on Japan and the U.S. based housed there. From Yahoo, nuclear-armed North Korea said Tuesday its missile launchers were training for a strike on U.S. bases in Japan as global condemnation of the regime swelled. 3 of the 4 missiles fired Monday came down provocatively close to the U.S. ally Japan in waters that are part of its exclusive economic zone, representing a challenge to U.S. President Donald Trump. In a separate phone call, Trump, whose rhetoric on the campaign trail has raised doubts about the issue, reaffirmed Washington's ironclad commitment to Japan and South Korea. The U.S. will demonstrate to Pyongyang that there were very dire consequences for its actions, the White House said in a statement. The United Nations Security Council scheduled an emergency meeting for Wednesday after a request by Washington and Tokyo to discuss additional measures following the launch. The UN resolutions Pyongyang is barred from any use of ballistic missile technology, and the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, said on Twitter that the world won't allow North Korea to continue on its destructive path. But 6 sets of UN sanctions since its first nuclear test in 2006 have failed to halt its drive for what it insists are defensive weapons. Well, North Korea is completely batshit crazy. And if they're testing missiles off the coast of Japan, that doesn't seem like a defensive military action. It seems like an offensive military action, as the West should look at it as so. But the even stranger thing is that if North Korea ever tried any crazy shit, there would just be a crater where it once was. I'm not sure what their angle is. While their people starve in the street, they're shooting missiles off. Like, QASR Con received bad news. Remember this guy from the Democratic Convention trying to demonize Trump. It's hilarious though. The left demonizes Trump for using the U.S. Navy SEAL's wife a couple weeks ago or last week as a pawn to promote his agenda. Yet the Democrats use this guy as a pawn to promote their agenda. So it's bad for one, good for the other, I suppose. QASR Con supposedly canceled his trip to Canada because his travel privileges were being reviewed. It wouldn't even surprise me if this was just all BS, but let's take a look here. Late Sunday evening, QASR Con, an American citizen for over 30 years, was notified that his travel privileges are being reviewed. As a consequence, Mr. Khan will not be traveling to Toronto on March 7th to speak about tolerance, understanding, unity, and rule of law. In other words, tolerance, understanding. Well, we already know what that means. That is the promotion and supremacy of Islam. Unity and the rule of law means, to them, anti-white rhetoric and pushing laws to promote that ideology. Very regretfully, Ramsay Talks must cancel its luncheon with Mr. Khan. Guests will be given full refunds. Mr. Khan offered his sincere apologies to all those who made plans to attend on March 7th, he said. The turn of events is not just deep concern to me, but to my fellow Americans who cherish our freedom to travel abroad. I have not been given any reason as to why. I am grateful for your support and look forward to visiting Toronto in the near future. Well, perhaps there's something about this man that we don't know about. We know that he is an Islamic extremist, an Islamic supremacist. But we'll see what happens.